December 15, 1994, Newport Beach, California. Inside a $1 million mansion, police discover the lifeless body of successful entrepreneur William Thompson, 55, slumped over his kitchen table. 6 gunshot wounds to the chest. His phone sits nearby, the screen illuminated with notification after notification, 467 text messages, and one from his 28-year-old mistress just minutes before the murder. The message reads, "If you don't choose me tonight, you'll regret this forever." But that wasn't the last message she sent. As detectives scrolled through the endless stream of texts, they realized something chilling. The person sending those desperate pleas for attention wasn't done yet. In fact, the most damaging evidence was still buried deep in that phone, waiting to expose a deadly obsession that turned love into murder. Tonight, you'll discover how 467 messages became the key to solving one of California's most twisted love triangle murders. Was it the scorned wife who finally snapped, the obsessive mistress who couldn't let go, or someone else entirely? Before we reveal the shocking truth, ask yourself this. Have you ever been so consumed by someone that you'd risk everything? Because for one woman, that obsession would cost everything.
Dark Stories. True crime is your home for chilling crimes, unsolved mysteries, and the darkest secrets the world has to offer. We uncover shocking cases, disturbing truths, and mysterious disappearances. Hit subscribe and join us.
3 people stood at the center of this deadly triangle. First, William Thompson, a 55-year-old medical device inventor who had built a fortune from nothing, living the American dream in a gated Newport Beach community. He was admired, successful, and seemingly had it all. But behind the perfectly manicured facade, William was living a double life that would ultimately destroy him. Then there was his live-in girlfriend, Sarah Miller, a 28-year-old mother of 2 who appeared devoted and loving to the outside world. But cracks were forming in their seemingly perfect relationship, and Sarah knew more about William's secrets than she let on. And finally, the mistress, 31-year-old Jessica Reynolds, a stunning woman who had entered William's life like a hurricane. Ambitious, relentless, and dangerously obsessed with a man who would never fully be hers. The questions that haunted investigators were simple, yet devastating. Who really killed William Thompson? Was this obsession born from love, or was it a calculated game of control and manipulation? And what did those 467 messages reveal about the final hours before the murder? As we piece together this puzzle, consider this. When love turns to obsession, how far would you go? William Thompson's story was the embodiment of the American dream. Born into a working-class family in Ohio, he had worked his way through engineering school, eventually inventing a revolutionary medical device that would make him millions. By 1994, he owned a luxurious home in Newport Beach's most exclusive gated community, drove expensive cars, and seemed to have everything a man could want. But success came with a price. William's first marriage had ended in divorce, leaving him with 3 children he rarely saw. When he met Sarah Miller through a personal ad in 1992, he thought he had found his second chance at happiness. Sarah was young, beautiful, and brought her 2 children into their blended family. To neighbors and friends, they looked like the perfect couple living in paradise. The house parties were legendary, the vacations exotic, and the lifestyle enviable. But money and luxury couldn't fix what was broken beneath the surface. William was a serial cheater who couldn't resist the thrill of the chase. He would disappear for hours, claiming business meetings that Sarah knew were lies. The fighting started quietly, whispered arguments behind closed doors, tense silences at dinner parties, fake smiles for the cameras. Sarah found herself trapped in a golden cage, financially dependent on a man who was slowly destroying her self-worth with his betrayals. She had given up her independence for security, but the price was higher than she ever imagined. Then, in early 1993, William met Jessica Reynolds at a charity gala. Jessica was everything Sarah wasn't: confident, aggressive, and unafraid to pursue what she wanted. She worked in real estate, selling million-dollar properties to wealthy clients, and she knew exactly how to play the game. Jessica saw William as the ultimate prize, successful, wealthy, and already proven willing to stray from his current relationship. What started as harmless flirtation quickly escalated into a full-blown affair. Jessica wasn't content being just another mistress. She wanted it all. The house, the money, the lifestyle, and most importantly, she wanted William to choose her. By the time anyone realized how far Jessica would go to get what she wanted, it was already too late. The obsession began innocently enough. Jessica would call William during business hours, claiming she needed advice on real estate deals. Then came the surprise visits to his office, the accidental encounters at restaurants and social events. Sarah noticed the changes immediately. William was distracted, secretive, and increasingly cruel in their private moments. He would disappear for hours, returning home with elaborate lies about client meetings and business dinners. Jessica's true nature emerged gradually. When William tried to establish boundaries, she would show up at his house unannounced. When he ignored her calls, she would call dozens of times in a single day. She hired private investigators to follow Sarah, gathering information about her daily routines and vulnerabilities. Jessica studied Sarah like a predator studies prey, learning her weaknesses and using them to manipulate William. The text messages started in November 1994, just weeks before the murder. At first, they were loving and seductive. "I can't stop thinking about last night, and when will you leave her?" But as William began pulling away, the messages grew desperate and threatening. Jessica would send 50, 60, sometimes 100 messages in a single day, cycling between declarations of love and barely veiled threats. William tried to break things off several times, but Jessica had other plans. She threatened to expose their affair to Sarah, to his business partners, to his children. She claimed to be pregnant, then later admitted she had lied. When manipulation didn't work, she turned to emotional terrorism, threatening self-harm if he didn't choose her. In the 48 hours before William's murder, Jessica sent exactly 467 text messages. Investigators would later analyze each one, tracking her psychological deterioration in real time. The messages revealed a woman spiraling into dangerous obsession. "You belong with me, not her. I won't let you destroy us." And finally, in the hours before his death, "If I can't have you, no one will." On the evening of December 14th, William had dinner with Sarah and her children, maintaining the facade of domestic happiness. But his phone buzzed constantly with Jessica's messages, each one more desperate than the last. He excused himself multiple times, stepping outside to try to reason with her, to end this nightmare once and for all. The final argument happened just after midnight on December 15th. William told Jessica in no uncertain terms that their relationship was over, that he was committed to making things work with Sarah. Jessica's response was swift and chilling. "Then you've signed your death warrant." But then investigators uncovered something that would blow the case wide open. Someone had deleted several of those text messages before police arrived at the scene. Quick check. Who do you think is guilty so far? The wife, the mistress, or someone else? Drop your guess in the comments. Let's see who's paying attention. The morning of December 15th started like any other. Sarah woke up at 6 a.m. to prepare breakfast for her children before school. She noticed William wasn't in bed, assuming he had gotten up early for work, as he often did. It wasn't until she walked into the kitchen that she discovered the horrific scene that would haunt her forever. William sat slumped over the breakfast table, blood pooling beneath him, 6 bullet wounds in his chest. His phone lay beside him, screen still lit up with Jessica's messages. Sarah's screams brought neighbors running, and within minutes, the quiet gated community was swarming with police cars and ambulances. The initial investigation seemed straightforward. William had been shot at close range by someone he knew. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of robbery. The killer had walked in, executed him, and walked out. But as detectives began digging deeper, the case became increasingly complex. Sarah's alibi was solid. Neighbors had seen her car parked outside all night, and her children confirmed she had never left the house. But Jessica's whereabouts during the crucial hours were mysteriously unclear. When police first interviewed Jessica, her behavior was erratic and suspicious. She alternated between sobbing uncontrollably and displaying an inappropriate calmness that unnerved the detectives. She claimed to have been at home alone, watching television, but couldn't provide any specific details about what she had watched. Her phone records told a different story entirely. The digital forensics revealed the obsessive pattern of her messages, including several sent just minutes after the estimated time of death. Even more damning, GPS data from her phone showed movement from her apartment to William's neighborhood around midnight, exactly when the murder occurred. The media quickly latched onto the story of the beautiful real estate agent and the millionaire inventor. Headlines painted Jessica as an obsessive gold digger who had manipulated her way into William's life and then killed him when he tried to escape. But the investigation was far from over. Red herrings began to emerge that complicated the narrative. William's business partner, Michael Chen, had been locked in a bitter dispute over patent rights worth millions. Michael had been at the house just days before the murder, arguing with William about money. His financial records showed he was facing bankruptcy, giving him a clear motive for murder. Then there was Sarah herself. Despite her solid alibi, investigators discovered she had been quietly consulting with divorce attorneys for months before William's death. She stood to inherit everything if William died, but would have left the relationship with almost nothing if she divorced him. Friends later revealed that Sarah had been researching William's life insurance policies and had even made comments about wishing he would just disappear. As detectives interviewed Jessica for the third time, her story began to fall apart. She contradicted previous statements, became defensive when pressed about specific details, and showed an alarming lack of remorse for William's death. When asked directly if she had killed him, her response was chilling. "If I had killed him, do you think I'd be stupid enough to leave all those messages as evidence?" But the breakthrough came when investigators uncovered surveillance footage from the mansion's security gate. The timestamp would reveal exactly who had entered the gated community that night, and it would change everything. The security footage was grainy and dark, but clear enough to identify vehicles entering and leaving the gated community. At 11:47 p.m. on December 14th, Jessica's white BMW was recorded passing through the main gate. The timestamp proved she had lied about being home alone that night, but even more damning evidence was about to surface. Jessica's phone contained not just the 467 messages she had sent, but also several that had been hastily deleted after William's death. Digital forensics experts were able to recover these deleted messages, and their content was absolutely devastating. The recovered messages showed premeditation and planning that chilled investigators to the bone. "I've been watching the house for weeks. I know exactly when she puts the kids to bed, and the spare key is still under the garden gnome. He never changed the hiding spot." Most shocking of all was a message sent at 12:15 a.m., just minutes after William's estimated time of death. "It's done. He chose wrong." During her fourth police interview, confronted with the overwhelming evidence, Jessica finally began to crack. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled as she realized the walls were closing in. Her lawyer advised her to remain silent, but Jessica's narcissism wouldn't allow it. She needed to control the narrative, to make everyone understand that this wasn't her fault. Jessica's version of that night painted her as the victim of William's manipulation and betrayal. She claimed she had gone to the house to have one final conversation, to beg him to reconsider their relationship. According to Jessica, William had become violent and threatening when she refused to leave. She claimed the gun had belonged to William, that she had grabbed it in self-defense when he tried to physically remove her from the house. But the forensics told a different story. The gun was registered to Jessica herself, purchased just 3 weeks before the murder. Ballistics confirmed it was the murder weapon, and gunpowder residue on Jessica's hands proved she had fired it recently. Even more damning, the angle of the bullet wounds indicated William had been sitting calmly at the table when he was shot, not engaged in any struggle. Friends and colleagues testified about Jessica's increasingly erratic behavior in the months leading up to the murder. Her real estate assistant revealed that Jessica had been showing up to work disheveled and distracted, making unusual mistakes that cost the company clients. She had been researching William's daily routines obsessively, asking inappropriate questions about his relationship with Sarah and his financial situation. Her neighbors reported strange behavior as well, late-night visits from unknown men, packages being delivered at odd hours, and Jessica's car leaving and returning at unusual times. The evidence painted a picture of a woman who had been planning this murder for weeks, possibly months. But Jessica's defense team had one final strategy that would nearly derail the entire prosecution. They were prepared to argue that William had promised to leave Sarah, that he had strung Jessica along with false promises, and that his betrayal had driven her to temporary insanity. It was a desperate gambit, but it nearly worked. The trial of Jessica Reynolds became one of California's most watched legal dramas. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded killer who had murdered William when she couldn't control him. The defense portrayed her as a victim of emotional manipulation who had snapped under the pressure of William's lies and false promises. The courtroom was packed every day with media, true crime enthusiasts, and William's family seeking justice. Jessica took the stand in her own defense, a risky move that her lawyers had advised against. On the witness stand, she was alternately sympathetic and chilling, often within the same sentence. She spoke about her love for William, claiming it was the deepest, most pure emotion she had ever experienced. But when pressed about the murder itself, her answers became evasive and contradictory. She maintained that killing William was never her intention, that she had only gone to his house that night to have one final conversation. According to Jessica's testimony, William had promised her for months that he would leave Sarah, that they would start a new life together. She claimed he had shown her jewelry he planned to give her, talked about houses they would buy, even discussed having children together. When he told her their relationship was over, she felt her entire world collapsing. The prosecution systematically destroyed Jessica's credibility during cross-examination. They produced evidence that William had never made any concrete promises to leave Sarah. In fact, private conversations with his business partner revealed that William had been planning to propose to Sarah and had been looking at engagement rings just days before his murder. The recovered text messages showed that Jessica's perception of their relationship had been largely one-sided and delusional. Most devastating was the timeline evidence. Phone records showed that Jessica had called a locksmith just days before the murder, claiming she had been locked out of her boyfriend's house. Security footage from a hardware store showed her purchasing zip ties and duct tape, items that were never found at the crime scene, suggesting premeditation for a crime that went beyond simple murder. During the prosecution's rebuttal, they called Sarah to testify for the first time. It was an emotional moment that brought many in the courtroom to tears. Sarah spoke about her relationship with William, acknowledging his flaws while maintaining that she had loved him despite his infidelities. Most shocking was her revelation that she had known about Jessica for months before the murder. She had been planning to confront William about the affair and give him an ultimatum: choose her or choose Jessica, but stop living a double life. Sarah's testimony demolished Jessica's claims that William was planning to leave her. According to Sarah, William had been making an effort to repair their relationship in the weeks before his death. He had even scheduled couples counseling sessions and had promised to end all outside relationships. The jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching their verdict. Jessica Reynolds was found guilty of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of lying in wait, making her eligible for the death penalty. However, the jury ultimately sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, Jessica showed no emotion, staring straight ahead as her carefully constructed world finally crumbled completely. The emotional fallout from the case extended far beyond the courtroom. Sarah spoke publicly for the first time after the trial, sharing her journey from victim to survivor. She had sold the Newport Beach house, unable to live with the memories, and had moved across the country with her children to start fresh. William's family struggled with conflicting emotions, relief that justice had been served, but also anger that their loved one's reputation had been dragged through the mud during the trial. The community remained divided on whether Jessica was truly a cold-blooded killer or a woman driven to madness by obsessive love. Some saw her as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked obsession. Others viewed her as another victim of a wealthy man who used his power to manipulate vulnerable women. But perhaps the most haunting question remained unanswered. Was this really about love at all? Or had Jessica's obsession with William been driven by greed, jealousy, and a narcissistic need to control? The 467 messages she sent in those final 48 hours suggested a woman who viewed William not as a person to be loved, but as a possession to be owned. When she couldn't have him, she made sure no one else could either. Let's rewind this devastating story in just 30 seconds. A successful millionaire living a double life. A young girlfriend who knew more than she revealed. An obsessive mistress who couldn't accept rejection. 467 text messages that chronicled a dangerous descent into deadly obsession. 6 gunshot wounds that ended a life and destroyed multiple families. 1 cold-blooded killer who chose murder over letting go. From love letters to death threats, Jessica Reynolds' messages told the story of how obsession can transform into something truly evil. As you reflect on this case, ask yourself, would you have spotted the red flags in this toxic relationship? Jessica's behavior escalated gradually. The excessive calls, the surprise visits, the manipulation and threats. William enabled her obsession by maintaining the affair despite clear warning signs. Sarah ignored her instincts about the danger Jessica posed. How many people saw what was coming but said nothing? If you were in William's position, what would you have done differently? Would you have ended the affair sooner, called the police when the threats escalated, or taken Jessica's warnings more seriously? And what about Sarah? Should she have confronted William about his infidelity before it was too late? Most importantly, how do we recognize when love becomes obsession, when passion becomes dangerous? The line between devoted love and unhealthy obsession can be frighteningly thin, and the consequences of missing that distinction can be deadly. These are questions worth considering because Jessica Reynolds isn't unique. Obsessive love turns fatal more often than we'd like to admit. The warning signs are usually there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to acknowledge them. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever encountered someone whose love felt more like possession? How did you handle it? Your experiences might help someone else recognize the dangers before it's too late. And if you found this case as compelling and disturbing as we did, wait until you hear about the Florida woman who turned her prom night into a deadly secret that took 20 years to uncover. A small town, a missing teenager, and a web of lies that fooled everyone until one person decided to tell the truth. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because the darkest secrets are always hiding in plain sight, and we'll be here to uncover them all.